Now, sports gamblers, Scott Spreitzer, one of the leaders and most trusted names in the country. Nobody watches and studies games more than he does. From TalkSports.com, here's Scott Spreitzer, exclusively on with Rockin' Minuch with Jimmy B on ESPN 620.
All right, we've been doing this for close to 20 years. Scott Spreitzer, along with Rockin' Minuch. You can follow him on X at Scott Wins. Of course, check him out at DocSports.com. How we doing today, Scott? What's going on? How'd you do in the fight last week?
We won the fight. We took TC, man. We took Bud Crawford and took the plus $1.40, and very happy throughout the fight. In fact, I thought he won by even a wider margin, and my only concern was just don't walk into something. And guys, if you saw the fight, man, he just never looked like he was fazed throughout the course of that fight. Never looked like he felt he was in danger. So, being the smart fighter that he is, we felt pretty good all along that he was going to take it once that fight got started. Very impressive. I love both those guys, by the way, man, but I had my money on Bud Crawford.
Scott, 70,000 plus at Allegiant for a boxing match. That's back in the Hagler's Hearns era, Robinson Duran era. That was phenomenal to see in Vegas last week.
Yeah, Vegas is dead. Haven't you heard?
Yeah.
It's a really, the Mexican Independence Day. Everybody thinks of Cinco de Mayo, but the Mexican Independence Day being, mid-September. I've been to a few of those cards that they've had over the years. I remember that one of them that I went to was Canelo against Floyd Mayweather. And they packed them in. I think it was at the EMDM, so there's probably about 18,000 people there, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, it was just hyped. You had people coming from all over the country. You had a very heavy Mexican fight crowd rooting for Canelo. And, Vegas is always buzzing on Mexican Independence Weekend. And so it was the perfect setup. But you're right. I thought they would probably get, I'm going to say 2 weeks before the fight, I'm thinking maybe they get 40,000. But, yeah, sure. 70,400 people, a record crowd for Allegiant Stadium. And it was cool to see because I'm such a big prize fight boxing fan on the Vegas Strip that it was great to see.
All right, Scott, let's start with it's a primetime game. Indiana hosting Illinois. It opened up about, I think, 4.5. Indiana favorite. Line moved to 6.5. Both teams 3-0. The money right now looks like it's pretty heavy on Illinois. How you handicapping this one?
Yeah, they've been betting Illinois. It did get up, though, to 6.5, as you mentioned, with Indiana. I jumped in at 4.5 and liked it up to 6. I wouldn't bet Illinois in this game, but that number's starting to get high to where I think if you didn't jump in at 6 or less, now that it's 6.5, even saw a 7 out there. Now it's getting a little bit too expensive for me, but the reason, and I'm not downplaying Illinois a whole lot by saying this, but they won a bunch of 50-50 games last year, 5 of them, 5-0 in those 50-50 games. They had overtime wins over Nebraska and Purdue. And so I wasn't as high on Illinois, even though I have them top 20, as a lot of folks were going into this year. Now, if they win this game, which isn't going to shock anybody, they got a shot at a playoff berth at the end of the season if they stay healthy. But Duke outgained Illinois by a few yards earlier this year. They threw for over 350. As one capper that I know put it, Duke had more of what we call in metrics success plays than did Illinois, but Illinois finished with a +5 turnover margin, and they had a couple of real short drives, 17-yard drive for a touchdown, 23-yard drive for a touchdown coming off of those Duke turnovers. And remember, the score was 14-13, late in the third quarter. Indiana has played a soft slate. We do know that the last 2 weeks, but Old Dominion in that opener, they're looking a little bit better. That win is starting to look good after what the Monarchs have done thus far, and Indiana outgained it by 200 yards. I love the Cal transfer. Fernando Mendoza doesn't throw picks. And then defensively, I think Signetti is going to have his defense better prepared than they were last season for the Illini. So Indiana at 6 or less, maybe it'll come down to half a point before kickoff.
All right, Scott, Michigan -1.5 at your old stomping grounds in Nebraska. Will this eventually get down to a pick 'em? And I guess my question for you, Michigan with the young true freshman quarterback, Raiola, the second-year quarterback for Nebraska, at Nebraska. I don't know, just kind of follow my math. Doesn't most home teams like this in this kind of game get +3? And then if it's the visitor -1.5, that seems almost like a 4-point swing if you do my K-State math correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Nebraska's home field hasn't been what it was the last 9 or 10 years, but you'd still have to, I think, throw a 3 on that. I don't throw a blanket 3 on home field. Some are more valuable than others. And at one time, Nebraska was probably worth 5.5 points in their heyday. But I would say it's worth about 3. Michigan was as high as a 3.5 point favorite last Sunday morning. And when all the books started opening the number, it just got hit on Nebraska, drove it all the way down to 1.5, got back up to 2.5 during the week. Now it's back down to 1.5. I like the seasoned quarterback over a true freshman playing his second road game, and we saw him fall apart at Oklahoma, although Venables is a defensive genius, as you guys know. But if you remove one 75-yard run by Justice Haynes when Oklahoma blew a defensive play, the rest of the game, the Wolverines gained 213 yards on less than 4 yards per play. And if Nebraska can corral Underwood, because he's going to be cut loose, Biff is going to let him do what he does, which is run the football a lot. They've got to corral him because he could turn that potential 6-yard sack into a 45-yard gain. Brendan Sorsby ran for 96 yards against the Huskers for Cincinnati. Michigan's D-line can be scary, but I think Nebraska will be okay up front. The questionable part for me is how will Nebraska's new defensive tackles handle the Michigan ground game? Guys, I have to see Nebraska beat a ranked team before I can plunk my money down on the Huskers against a ranked team. But I will say Nebraska 24-20.
Oh, ye have little faith.
I got to tell you, though, but if they could win this game, it's so good for football. Man. I mean, to see Michigan to fall and just start seeing Nebraska have some success. I'm kind of biased. A place I hang out with, they carry the Huskers every Saturday, and it's just it's a great crowd. As you know, people from Nebraska are wonderful, and they deserve it. They deserve a win like this.
Yeah, I guess I would trade 60 years of outstanding football for 10 or 12 of weak football, but it sure does feel like 100 years the last decade.
It does.
But
it really
but
does.
You know, I was just going to say that, you know, if they win this game, they're playoff bound. I really believe that. If they lose this game, probably 9 wins and a decent bowl game. And, you know, again, improving year by year under Matt Rule. But win this game and they've got a great shot at a playoff.
Will the Spreitzer family household play the Nebraska fight song if they win this game?
Go Big Red!
Will you have the Bose speakers blowing out the fight song?
You know, it's going to be one of those things where it'll start tonight, it'll last through the game tomorrow, and if they lose, all the hats and jerseys go in the fireplace. Again. It's getting expensive, guys.
Yeah, it's getting expensive. All right, ASU at Baylor. Baylor, home favorite, -2.5. Over-under is around 59, 60-point range. Their quarterback is outstanding. Leads the Big 12 in passing yards and touchdowns so far. How you handicapping this one?
Yeah, this one's been dancing all around this line, as high as 3, as low as 1.5, and now just about every book, as you mentioned, has Baylor a 2.5-point favorite. Worried about the Sun Devils on the road with a sluggish passing game. We went against them and played Mississippi State a couple of weeks ago and got the win there. And then we were on ASU last week and eked out a 1-point cover, and it never looked like it was going to happen, but they got it done. Leavitt isn't putting up big numbers, and 2 of the games came against outman teams, and I think that's a concern. Obviously not having Scatterbo anymore to knock guys off their blocks. But the ground game is fine, but I'm not sure a one-dimensional offense is going to beat Baylor and Waco, which if it did, would be the second time in 4 weeks. Auburn did, but the run defense has shored up some problems the last couple of weeks. And you just mentioned Sawyer Robertson. He's going to air it out. He's throwing the ball over 30 times per game this season. In fact, going back to the start of last season, over 32 times per game. So ASU has to keep it close early. I think they're going to leave Waco with their second loss, though, guys. I think Baylor wins by 7.
All right, last but not least, we got a couple more here. Let's get the Cardinals at 49ers. Last time I looked, Scott, the Niners were -2.5. Brock Purdy looks like it'll be a game-time decision, but Mac Jones is ready to go. CMC is healthy. Receivers are banged up a little bit, but it's that Niners defense is starting to see the juice we saw a couple years ago that seems to be vitally important in this game.
Yeah, you're right about that. And if we would have done this 30 minutes ago, I would have talked about the line moving from 1.5 to 3, which would make me think Purdy was going to play on Sunday because he has practiced this week. But like 5 minutes before we went on the air here, we got the word that he is not expected to start, which would mean Mac Jones gets the start. And he was fine last week, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And again, you look at that Arizona defensive backfield and they're banged up at corner especially. But what I like most about the Niners is what you just said. They hired Robert Saleh, great hire, huge hire. The defense is nasty through 2 games. They were not last season, and those teams last year had a lot of those defenses, had a lot of injuries. And Kyler Murray lit them up last year. He tore them up on a handful of carries in game 1. He tore them up through the air in game 2. But I like this defense for San Francisco this year under Saleh, and I think that'll be the difference. So, to me, Purdy or Mac Jones, I think the line should have been 3. It's dropped to 2.5 with the word that Mac Jones is likely to start. I still like San Francisco.
Do you ever look ahead? So like a Thursday night game, the spread with the Cardinals hosting Seattle, Seattle's plus 1.5 right now. Do you ever look at those lines a week ahead?
Oh yeah, I actually make my lines a week before the games are played. So like I've made my lines for next week. I made those about a week ago, like Saturday night and Sunday night in the NFL and college right after the games are played, because I want to get out in front of what the books are going to post. So that's one of my best tools that I can share with people. Learn how to make lines a week in advance. And what it does is it keeps you from overreacting to a team having a game in a positive sense way off the norm or in a negative sense way off the norm the previous week. You don't get caught up in what you just saw. Your mind is geared to think about the season long or weeks long categories and metrics. So, yeah, I mean, I do. And I made Arizona 3. As you mentioned, the books right now have 2.5 just about everywhere. I mean, there's one big book that has 1.5 on Arizona on Thursday night, but they've got a lot of juice on that 1.5 if you like the Cardinals. So, but I made it 3. So if it's sticking around 2, 3 or less, I'll probably be on Arizona, barring any new injuries this week.
Interesting. And then as we let you go, Texas Tech quickly at Utah. It's the Fox game. It's the early game. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, lean towards Utah at home field, and all that kind of good stuff. I do have power rate coaches, guys, and I have Kyle Whittingham higher rated by a decent amount over Joey McGuire. That might not be fair, but McGuire is benefiting from a ton of dough being flooded into this program. On 3, did a statistical look at teams that spend the most money in college football right now. Number 1, Texas. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Oregon. Number 2 in college football now, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So they're coming on. They're Oregon Junior, but I still think Utah is going to be a little bit too tough for them in this one.
As always, Scott, have a good weekend. Good luck.
Good luck, guys. Take care.
That's Scott Spreitzer. Follow him at DocSports.com or just on his Twitter account at Scott Wins. All right, Matthew Tkachuk is making ESPN College Game Day history. Miami is going to honor a couple of Heisman legends, and the ACC is eyeing a new scheduling model. We'll get into that next as we're coming to you live from Wright Toyota. It's Rock and Manuch with Jimmy B.